wondered what it's like to stumble across a crime scene? I certainly have, and to me, I would be absolutely terrified if I came across what a group of young TikTokers came across last summer on a beach in Seattle, Washington. So let's go ahead and jump right in, grab a drink, grab some coffee, a snack, and let's investigate. Before I jump in, I just wanted to remind you to please hit that subscription button down below if you're interested in seeing any of my true crime videos. I upload about 3 different videos a week. The spring of 2020 was a challenging time for everybody across the world. COVID had caused certainly a nationwide lockdown in America, but lockdowns all over the world. It was starting to get nice out because, you know, when we hit April and May and June, it starts to be nice and the weather starts warming up. And at this point, most of us were still in a lockdown period. We couldn't leave our homes. And at the end of May, when the George Floyd murder happened, America went under even stricter lockdowns. There were stay-at-home orders. You could not go out after a certain time period. So it was a very uncomfortable and very odd time for us in America, at least. And like I said, it was starting to be nice out. So what do teenagers do? They go out during the summer, they have fun, they maybe go to the movies or whatever. But since everything was closed, teens and young adults were left with TikToking and making YouTube videos. So there really wasn't a lot to do. You know, I had pretty much blown through everything I wanted to watch on every single app, and I'm sure that you all did as well. So I can understand the boredom. And during this time, many TikTokers and YouTubers had discovered the app Randonautica. And I personally did not know what Randonautica was at all. I have never heard of it. I remember hearing about this crime and the murders, but I don't remember hearing the name of the app or anything like that. I thought that kids were just walking on a beach. I didn't know. But when I was doing more research on this video and I heard about the app, I watched a ton of YouTube videos. I watched a bunch of TikToks. And I read several articles on the app and how it works, and it's really interesting. The app was created by a man named John Langfelder, who was a former circus performer. He discovered a bot on a French science chat on a website called Telegram in 2019. The bot was called the Fatum Project, and the purpose of the bot was to allow people to change their predetermined destiny using their own imagination, and the app would basically take them someplace that they would have never gone to before. So tell me why the Fatum Project sounds like something that would be in the Terminator or a robot scary movie where the robot comes and kills everybody in the world. I found that name really odd, and I'm wondering if they named it something like that on purpose, because it's kind of a creepy name. So if you were to think about it, a group of teens on a regular, summer day may, go get an ice cream, go to the movies, maybe go on a walk in the park, hang out at home and play video games, whatever. But because of the pandemic, they were all bored, and so many people were downloading this app, and it was taking them to abandoned houses and crashed buses where all the glass is broken everywhere, and graveyards. So the app tracks your location. You're allowed to, put exactly where you are, and it also asks you what you want to manifest in this adventure or what your intent is. And so if you're not familiar with manifestation is the idea if you want something very much in your mind that it's going to happen for you. So if you are telling yourself, I want a new car, I need a new car, the idea is that you are supposed to work that in your mind and that you are putting it out in the universe that you want a car, and that's going to cause you to work harder to be able to afford to buy a car, and maybe a good deal will come across your path at some point. So that is the idea in this app. If you say on this adventure you want to find happiness, you want to find love, then that's what you're supposed to find on this trip. And some people have manifested colors. So I saw one where a person was asking to see like the color yellow, and they saw lots of things that were yellow on this trip. I've seen a lot of different things. Of course, now some people manifest like death and things like that. So you do, I feel like, come across creepier stuff when you do that. But even some people that are manifesting really nice things are coming across things that are scary. So after you put in what you want to manifest, the app gives you coordinates, and it, gives you the directions on how to get to these coordinates, and that is where your adventure is supposed to be. Randonauters existed before the app was created, but this made it much easier for the everyday person to use. This caused Randonautica to blow up during the lockdown so teens could have fun social distancing. The app had 10.8 million users as of July 2020, and many videos on YouTube and TikTok are showing all of these creepy locations that the app sent them to. So this was like free advertising for the app. They have done like no advertising for themselves whatsoever. They've just gone off like word of mouth for what people have made these videos for. I do feel like the app can potentially take you somewhere dangerous or very scary, so always err on the side of caution using something like this. But imagine going out and like wanting to do something fun with your friends, just gonna go out and have like a fun day, just try something different, and then you happen to stumble across a crime scene. And this is exactly what happened to the TikTok user Henry on June 19th, 2020. He posted the videos on TikTok before the police even arrived, before they could, maybe potentially ask him to not do it. But he ended up uploading these videos because him and the police thought that maybe this was a prank, that this wasn't real. And so he uploaded the video using the hashtags FYP for your page, hashtag Washington, hashtag Seattle. There's several other ones he used, but it was just uploaded as if it was like an everyday, TikTok video. And of course, as you can see in the video, a large roller type suitcase is shoved between all of these really big rocks on the shoreline, and they noticed the smell when they got close to it, and one of them like snuck through those gates and started unzipping it, which I probably wouldn't do, but that's just me. They started unzipping it, and right when it opened, they could tell that the smell was absolutely foul, that it's something that they've never smelled before, very intense. And so that is when they decided to call the police. And right after the video was posted, it became really popular right off the bat, of course. And many people thought that it was a hoax. Many of the other users were leaving comments saying like, this is fake, this is staged. And Henry made other videos showing like the Randonautica like screenshots and showing that it was real, and they just happened to stumble across this. But still people were saying that he was lying, that they put the suitcase there and filled it with like rotten meat, or it's not filled with anything, even though when you open the suitcase they could clearly see that it was stuffed with garbage bags and that there was clearly something in those garbage bags. Police took about 3 hours to get there, which they went under a lot of scrutiny during that time for taking so long to show up. But because the tide was like starting to rise, it actually took the suitcase into the water. The suitcase was kind of like floating between the rocks and the water, and so it was harder for the police to find because it was started floating out into the water. As the police got there, it had been hours and the tide had been coming up for a long time. So the police were starting to say that they were lying, and so they had to show the police the TikToks they made. So while all this is going on, really close by in Seattle, the Capitol Hill like protests were going on, because of course this wasn't that long after the George Floyd murder, like I said, and so there was a lot going on in the area, and so the police were like crazy busy. There was always something going on, and unfortunately when there is a protest for a good cause, no matter what it is, there's always going to be an outlier that decides to do something wrong or illegal or dangerous. And so the police thought that the kids were just playing a prank. They really did not believe them at this time. And I don't want to say I understand, but I do get it that during protests and things like that, there is often things that shouldn't happen, right? Things that have nothing to do with the protests that people do. So they thought the kids were just playing a prank and messing with the police, but they still continued to search the beach because the kids were showing them their TikToks, and the police could see that these kids were like really uncomfortable and they felt like weird. You feel, I'm sure, like awful after coming across something like that. So I feel that the police were not really sure what to think about this situation. So police continued to search the beach, and once they made it around to the east side, they ended up spotting the suitcase. But like I said, the teens had opened it, they unzipped it, and so the bag had floated out, and they saw that the bag was like floating farther out into the water, and so they had to retrieve the bag, the suitcase, the garbage bag, and then they still were checking around the beach to find any other clues. So police called the harbor unit to retrieve the bag because it was floating out further and further. While they were waiting, though, police continued to search the beach for more evidence, and they ended up finding a large duffel bag about 150 feet from where the suitcase was originally found. A smaller white bag was floating out in the water as well, and that ended up coming out of the duffel bag. So the harbor unit was able to retrieve all of the bags, the suitcase, the black garbage bag, the duffel bag, and the small white bag. And when they were checking the bags, checking for evidence, they discovered that the bags contained 2 separate bodies, one male and one female. On June 22nd, an autopsy took place and discovered that the bodies belonged to 27-year-old Austin Wenner and 35-year-old Jessica Lewis. They were a couple that had been together for about 7 years, and that same day, more remains for their bodies were found near the Seattle City Light substation near the Duwamish River. The autopsy also stated that Jessica and Austin had been beaten very badly before their death, and Jessica had been shot 7 times and Austin once. They also determined that their time of death was on June 9th. So investigators discovered that the couple had been murdered inside because their bodies had no insect activity. But it was really confusing because the bodies had feathers like stuck on them inside of the bags, and Jessica had grass in her mouth. The investigators notified their families and quickly got them into questioning and started finding out what could have possibly happened to Austin and Jessica. Their families told police that Jessica was referred to as Jessie and Austin was called Cash or sometimes Cash Money, and they were always together. Throughout their relationships, they had ups and downs, but in the end, they could always count on each other. Jessica had 4 children, and their ages are unknown to the public, but from what I've read in articles, 2 of her children are older, like out of high school older, and then she has 2 younger ones that would still be in school at this time. And Austin had a child in 2014, about a year or so before him and Jessica ever got together, but not much is known about him, and it's not really clear if Austin had a relationship with his son. In December 2019, the couple rented a small room from a man named Michaelleedudley. The home is in Berrien, Washington, which is a bit south of Seattle and is located off the Puget Sound. Berrien would be about 25 to 30 minutes from where the bodies were found on a leaky beach. Throughout the police interviews, their family stated several times that Jessica and Austin felt unsafe, that Austin was, involved in some gang activity, and he had crossed potentially a gang of Samoans, and the couple were afraid for their lives. So that just makes me really sad that the last, couple weeks to a month or so, or maybe even longer, the couple were afraid. They were worried that something bad was going to happen to them. Shortly before their murders, Austin and Jessica were doing yard work for his mother in exchange for some cash because they were really low on money, and Austin really stressed to his family that they needed money like right now. Austin told his mother that he needed money because the Samoans had come to their home and beat them up really badly, and they wanted money from Austin. When police spoke to Austin's cousin, he also said that he felt Austin was getting involved in credit card scams as well as COVID relief check scams. So he felt that Austin was maybe getting in a little bit over his head. You know, it seems as if Austin was involved in maybe some like lower level crime stuff, and he was trying to get into more like bigger things with like larger amounts of money. And so his cousin and many people in his family feels like he may have crossed the wrong person. Austin had told his father in the beginning of June that the Samoans had attacked him and Jessica and that they desperately needed money. So he told his father that about a week before the murder. And the couple and his father were planning to spend some time together again that following week. And when the father tried to contact Austin, he didn't answer his phone. But this was pretty normal for the family because Austin's phone most of the time didn't work, from what they said. So if the family needed to get a hold of Austin, they would call Jessica, but she didn't answer either. So the father started to get a little bit worried because he couldn't get a hold of the couple at all. So his father ended up going to the room that they were renting out at the time that was located on Amway Boulevard in Burien. And he ended up speaking to the landlord. He asked michaelleedudley, hey, have you seen Austin or Jessica? You know, do you know what's going on with them? And he claimed that he had no idea where they were. They just left, and they left all of their stuff. And he was kind of like complaining to Austin's dad, which I thought was really odd. So he left, but before Austin's father left, he noticed that a lot of Austin's clothing was in a garbage can, so that immediately alerted him. And also, it seems very suspicious that the couple would leave without any belongings. Like, where could they have possibly gone? And Dudley made it seem as if they just left. Like, they didn't get in trouble or anything like that. They just one day left the house and he never saw him again. So he made himself seem suspicious right away. And because Austin had told his family that he was scared and the Samoans came to the house and beat them up, you know, it's believable that this could have been a gang activity. And he also told his family that the Samoans, the day they came and beat Austin and Jessica up, that they carved Austin's name in a bullet and like left it in his mailbox. So that's scary, you know. And so I really do understand why the police at this point just assumed it was a gang-related activity, because all, you know, evidence would point to that. But the police received a very interesting little tidbit of information from a witness. So this man, who, he didn't live there anymore, but he was there all the time because his ex-wife lived there and his child was there. So the ex-wife told him that there were gunshots and that she heard screaming. So this man called the police and told them like there were gunshots going off, people screaming, and you know, he let them know that maybe they should check the house. He had seen Austin and Jessica around the area, so he thought that maybe there was some sort of connection with those gunshots. So if he didn't call, this would have just been chalked up to, you know, a gang-related activity. So police started investigating the other neighbors. They started asking around, and apparently that night a few neighbors called the police and were reporting gunshots and were reporting screaming, but nobody answered the door, so they left. But they still went around and asked all these neighbors, and many people were saying they heard gunshots. They heard a man saying, please don't do this, and they heard a lot of commotion that night. Other tenants had stepped up to give statements about Dudley and talk about some of their weird experiences with him. The main testimony that is really important to the case is from a person called Witness D on all of the court documentation. And she was going to move into this room. She had met Michael through a friend, and she had planned on, you know, renting out this room. And so she ended up coming to the house like the day after the murders, and her story is actually really horrifying. So witness D was introduced to Dudley by witness F, who was like a mutual friend, I guess, between the two, and or at least a mutual acquaintance between the two. And witness D was going to move in like the day after the murders, like the morning after. And when she met Michael, when she arrived at the home, Michael's glasses were like all broken up. His face had scratches all over it as if somebody had been clawing at his face. And overall, he just looked in a really like messed up state. Like he looked like, you know, something really bad had happened to him. And because witness F drove witness D to the home, you know, just to introduce her and Michael, she stayed and took a shower and, you know, just kind of did her thing for a little bit. And then she ended up leaving. And witness D then took a shower and started to settle into her room. And as soon as she started like putting things away in her room, you know, kind of actually going into the room, because she really didn't go into it too much before she took a shower. She kind of like had her stuff just like in a bag sitting out there, and then she ended up taking it to the room afterwards. And she immediately felt uncomfortable because in the room she saw what looked like a dead body laying on the floor with a bunch of clothes piled on top of it. But she saw a bloody handprint hanging out. So this would alert me to leave like that second. I don't care if I wasn't dressed out of the shower, I would be getting out of there, right? But she stayed and she wanted to ask Michael what was going on. Why is there a dead body in the room? What's happening? And so she said that she asked Michael in a joking way what happened. And I wish I could be like a fly on the wall and see how you ask somebody, why is there a dead body in my room? But apparently that happened, and according to her, Michael laughed when she asked him this question. As she was investigating the room, she also saw that there were bullet holes in the nightstand as well as the bed frame, and she turned on the TV, and on the Roku device that was hooked up to the TV, she saw it was registered to Austin Wenner, but she had never previously met Austin or Jessica, so she really didn't think anything too much about the name. She just thought, you know, maybe it came with the place or somebody previously left it. But still, with the Roku and the bullet holes and the dead body, that would alert me, but that's just me. And I'm assuming because witness D started asking questions and was, you know, kind of joking around about what was going on in her room, Michael knew that he had to clean up the crime scene, right? So he gave her the keys to his truck and just like wanted her to leave. Like, was like, just go somewhere for a few hours and let me clean up. And before she left, she saw in the basement that Michael was laying down really large sheets of plastic, and witness D worked up enough courage to ask him what happens, like what happened to the tenants, what is going on. She just felt really confused. Michael told her that he had tenants that were renting out the room she was in for about $1,500 a month, and they had not been paying him in months, and they refused to leave. He also told her that the couple may have been stealing from him and locked him out of his house. So she asked him what happened to these previous tenants, and he responded, quote, "Let's just put it this way, his gun misfired and mine didn't," end quote. Another important person to this case is witness E. And like I said, a lot of people were in and out of this home. I don't know if there was like some illegal activity. I couldn't really find anything about that going on in this home, but there was a lot of people in and out. And witness E, you know, didn't live there. She just stored some items in the home. She stored items and would lock the door so no one could get to her stuff, but she just came and went, and she claimed that she didn't live there. She would just stay there every once in a while. And she came to the home like the day after the murders, and she saw that Michael had big garbage bags in the back of his truck. And she said that immediately she knew that something was wrong, that there was not a regular garbage smell in the air, that it was something so foul and so disgusting. So she knew something was up, but she didn't know exactly what. So witness E was aware that Michael had asked Jessica and Austin to leave several times and they just wouldn't go before the murders, and that Austin had stolen a vehicle from the Samoans allegedly. I'm not really sure about that for sure, but he kept it at the home, and this was causing a lot of drama. Again, this maybe was why the Samoans came and, beat him and Jessica up. So he was keeping like a stolen vehicle at the home, and it was just causing a lot of drama within Michael's home that he was renting. She asked Michael, what's going on with Austin and Jessica? Are they here? Are they not here? I don't know if she ever had an issue with them stealing. Otherwise, why would you ask that question? But she asked Michael, like, are they going to be here, or, do I need to lock my door? And Michael told her, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Police ended up conducting a search on June 19th of Michael's home, and when they were searching Austin and Jessica's room, they found blood in the room. They also found the 2 bullet holes, but they noticed that the room was pretty freshly cleaned and painted, and so when they asked Michael about this, he basically just said, well, I got a new tenant, and he talked about that Jessica had accidentally cut herself in the room, so he just had a lot of excuses as to what was going on in that room. But it does seem a little bit suspicious that a room has bullet holes and blood but fresh paint. Police checked Michael's truck and they found an unregistered handgun, and he was arrested. And at this time, Michael is being charged with 2 counts of murder, but this investigation is still ongoing because when they did the autopsies, they believe that there was more than one person involved in this. In the very least, multiple people dismembered the bodies, and most likely more than one person committed the murders as well. And I can definitely see that because when you're reading the autopsy, there's several different types of cuts, many different afflictions, different ways the cuts were done, like if it was done by someone with left hand, right hand, different weights and strengths, and multiple different weapons used. So that totally makes sense to me, and they have not been able to find out who else helped him at this point. So one of the main theories that investigators are still working on in this case is the fact that Austin was involved in some gang-related activity. And there are several Samoan and Pacific Islander gangs in Seattle. And it was known to his family and friends that he crossed at least one group of them, and that they came to his home at some point and beat him and Jessica up. So investigators believe that maybe Michael worked with these gangs because they were both fed up with Austin and wanted to get rid of him. And to me, that is what makes the most sense, right? So if these gangs were coming to the home and trying to intimidate Austin and actually, causing them physical harm, Michael may have said something to them, like, we could get rid of them together, or I can kill them and you could help me get rid of the bodies. I could definitely see that happening, and that to me is the most probable case. Of course, they have to go through a court of law and find evidence, but to me that definitely makes the most sense. Some also believe that the other tenants helped Michael kill Jessica and Austin. Like I said, witness E was so worried about keeping her room locked because of Austin and Jessica, so they feel that, maybe some of the other tenants or maybe even some of Michael's friends helped kill the couple. Michael has a very sketchy past, and it would be very easy for me to believe that he has some friends who are willing to carry out these crimes as well. In the 90s, Michael was convicted of several crimes. In 1994, he was convicted in California for carrying a concealed weapon in a car. In 1995, he was convicted for taking a car for temporary use. And in 1996, for stealing a car at a VUSCA drug charge in Washington, which is like a charge for controlled substances. And in 1997, he received a DUI in Oregon. And it's totally understandable why investigators feel that more than one person was involved because, like I said, Michael Dudley is 62, probably 63 years old now. And so for an older man like that to be able to get 2 people down to the ground by beating them up and then holding them and shooting them, seems unreasonable. It seems like other people may have helped, beat them up or held them down, whatever that, could have happened. But I do feel like there are definitely other people involved. But unfortunately, as we all know, a lot of the times police can cover up for gangs. You do get these cops that just do not care and are doing illegal activity. So, in my mind, I feel like maybe Michael is telling them, like, oh, this gang helped me, or this gang didn't like Austin and Jessica, and I was there, but I didn't take full part of it, or something like that. I definitely could see something like that happening, and the police covering up for these gangs because they probably got some dirt on them as well. About a month after the bodies were found, on August 22nd, police stop and arrest 3 unknown suspects for cutting the padlock on the gate guarding the house and trying to tow a vehicle off Michael's property. And this seems very suspicious to me. Who are these people? On the articles that I read about them, it just says like 2 men and a woman. They didn't release any information on if these people were trying to cover up any evidence, if these people were just taking advantage of the fact that Seattle was like in no police zone for the while. They were like working on defunding police in that area because of the Black Lives Matter protest. So a lot of people are very curious about these people. Were they trying to take the car to get rid of it, to cover evidence? What is going on with this? And there has been no other information regarding this crime to the murder. So I do hope that at some point we do see some light regarding why was this car stolen, and maybe it was a potential random accident, or maybe they knew that a murder took place here and they thought it was like cool to steal a car. Who knows, right? There are so many possibilities, but we haven't heard like anything else as to what is going on with that particular instance. So the medical examiner for this case stated that Austin and Jessica were beaten severely before they were killed. And to me, this is suggesting a very deep anger, very deep-seated. So that is why I do feel like there was some gang activity. Maybe Austin did something. Obviously, that doesn't mean he deserves to get murdered. But maybe he did something to cross a gang and they just like beat the hell out of him before Michael murdered them. Or vice versa even. But this does suggest something deeper than money. Of course, it's not right to not pay your rent, especially if you're just like avoiding this person for months and just like not paying it because you don't feel like it. Of course, that's wrong, but that doesn't mean that you have the right to kill somebody or that you should do it or even think about it. So to me, that is just absolutely terrible and so sad. And in a way, I do feel like that they were trying to torture Austin because they knew how much he loved Jessica, because Jessica was shot 7 times. And the shots were gratuitous. They didn't need to shoot her that many times for her to die. So to me, I feel like they were trying to torture Austin by killing Jessica and shooting her and beating her so many times. And like the neighbors, they said they heard a man say, "Please let me go, please let me go." And so that's suggesting to me that they already killed Jessica, and then they were torturing Austin and eventually killed him. But I just feel really bad because that's so terrible. Like, can you imagine the person that you love the most in the world being tortured right in front of you and there's absolutely nothing you could do about it? So that just really makes me feel so sorry for Austin that he had to go through that. So it has been discovered through the internet, people doing their own research, that Michael was not necessarily like renting an apartment building or like a duplex or anything like that. He was actually running an Airbnb for about $100 a night. And that explains why renting out 1 bedroom is $1,500, because I was like shocked when I read that amount. So the Airbnb fees make sense. And it makes sense that some people just stayed there a long time. It really seems like this home did have some like transient people that were not able to, use their credit to get an apartment, people that were just kind of like, doing whatever and traveling and things like that. So he did have some people that stayed there for quite a long time, but again, he also did have people come and go very often. But there was a comment left on one of Austin's Airbnb pages for the room that there was chickens, and that the chickens sometimes got into the house because the doors would be left open and the chickens were, I guess, just like running around the yard. So that explains where the feathers came from. Now that's really interesting that we found out just through a comment left on Airbnb that Michael had chickens, and so that's how, you know, the bodies had, you know, chicken feathers on them. And we also know that there was not a lot of gang activity in the Seattle area. They were much more active in Berrien, and there was a lot more like gang activity out there. From what it seems, that is a more like lower income area, and so there's a lot more gang activity. And so the police were not really worried about that area so much because so much was going on in Seattle that normally wasn't going on. So all their focus was there and they weren't worried about anything else. But, you know, we do know that the area that Austin and Jessica were living in did have heavy gang activity. Jessica's aunt had told investigators that the couple stated to her several times that they were scared of Michael, that he was very intimidating and creepy and weird, and that they were really afraid of him. At one point, he allegedly beat a dog to death in their front yard so Austin and Jessica wouldn't leave the home, that they would be afraid to leave. And apparently Michael had done things to their car. He had like broken things off their car, and Michael is known to allegedly put GPS trackers on people's cars, so that's totally believable. So he was doing these things to scare them, and so they were afraid to leave their home. And there were days where they would just like lock the door and not leave for days. And since this investigation is ongoing, many people have stepped forward who've lived in the home, and not just people who stayed at the Airbnb part of it for like a day or two, but people who've stayed there for a long period of time have stated that Michael would be threatening you and screaming at you to get out, but he would lock the doors so you couldn't leave, so he would just be like in your face screaming at you, and again put damage on people's cars. He would put GPS trackers on people's cars, and so he is a very dangerous and scary person. And Jessica's aunt basically said that they had nowhere else to go, so they felt stuck staying there. And of course, like, the pandemic was going on, so they didn't know where else to turn. Michael's daughter even tried to get a restraining order on him in 2018 because he drugged and sexually assaulted her for 9 years, from the time she was 10 to 18 years old. He would force her to watch him pleasure himself and watch adult tapes. She told the court she felt unsafe leaving her home, and they denied her a restraining order because these allegations fall under domestic violence. And that just makes me feel absolutely terrible for his daughter, that she did not receive any justice during this time, because that's absolutely terrifying to go through. And our justice system is so terrible sometimes. Like, people get away with absolutely terrible things, and like, nobody cares, right? It's just, this person just keeps on getting hurt. And like, all of these previous offenses that Michael had, and, you know, his daughter stepping forward and talking about how he raped her for years and drugged her, he didn't get in any trouble. So it's like, sometimes these people just fall through the cracks and they end up staying on the street forever, and they end up doing an even bigger, more wild crime, something that's, you know, like something a serial killer would do, or a big murder like this. So it's really sad that people like this fall through the cracks and they never get in any serious trouble for what they do. And so all of this makes me think that Michael has probably killed other people, or at least has done really horrible things to other people, like he did his daughter. And so Michael's a very dangerous person. So if he does ever get out for some reason, I would definitely not stay at his Airbnb and stay clear away from him, because he is a very sick and depraved individual. And it feels as if he thought that he would get away with this crime, because of course, like I said, all these protests were going on and the police were so focused on that, he had the audacity to not only murder this couple, but also leave a dead body in the room when a new tenant was coming in and brag about the fact that he murdered them, and then just carelessly shove them in a suitcase and leave them on a beach for some kids to come and find. So this makes me feel that Michael really thought he was going to get away with this. He thought that nobody was watching him and that he could do whatever he wanted. So I really do feel that Michael has probably committed several other crimes that we just don't know about. And Michael may have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those teenagers and their Randonautica app. And I just find that really interesting, just, you know, coming back to the app, because many people feel that it takes you to a highly spiritual or paranormal area and it draws you to that place and it like changes your destiny. So the idea that the app changed these teenagers' destiny to bring justice to these people, this couple that something terrible happened to, that otherwise their bodies may have just floated into the water and nobody would have ever known what happened to them. So I just find that really interesting and I don't know, just scary. So I don't know, I just find that so incredibly interesting that their bodies were found because of this and that they did, and you know, hopefully will receive justice and their story will be able to be told because of this app, even though the app claims that they had nothing to do with it, of course. They said they didn't send them there on purpose. How would they know that it was there? But I still find it like incredibly interesting. So this case is still awaiting trial at the time of me making this video. But if you all want me to make an update video when there is a verdict or when trials happen, please let me know in the comments. I find this case incredibly interesting and, you know, it was just really sad and I just feel absolutely terrible for Austin and Jessica and as well as their families. You know, even though a lot of people I've read online have said, well, they were good people so they deserved it. And if you feel that way, I don't know what to say about you as a person because nobody deserves what happened to them. Right? Nobody deserves that besides like, you know, maybe like a Nazi doctor or something. Like nobody deserves that to happen to them. And I just feel terrible that they had to go through this and that their families had to go through this and they have children, you know, so they, unfortunately, it seems like they're always going to be remembered as the couple that was found cut up on a beach. Like that is so sad. And that their bodies were on display for like everyone in the world to see on TikTok. But I don't know, I just find it really sad and heartbreaking, and this case just was really scary and interesting and just really sad to me. So I definitely want to do some updates when, you know, we come to a conclusion on this case. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to happen. But yeah, so I'll definitely do an update on this when we find something else out. So thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, please hit like down below and let me know if there are any other cases you want me to cover. I will definitely do so. I have a list going of people that I want to talk about. And otherwise, I hope you all have a great day and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.